Localization. What the hell does that mean? Today on...
Press B to cancel.
Welcome, everybody. I am Pulse109. I'm joined by the council, of course, and I'm pretty sure I'm the only one who actually refers to them as the council. So we know everybody here. We have Sick Jake.
Hey, great to be here, and inside jokes start in the heart of one person.
There, exactly. How about Werewolf?
That guy owe me cookie.
Okay, that's his normal voice. He's usually using a fake one when he streams and in here. So, and finally, we have GP.
I am GP. Welcome to Die.
Welcome to the... We're doing a localization thing here, so he's been talking about translation and censorship and some other stuff. That's what we're going to get into. We'll make this like edutainment, except it's not going to be Reader Rabbit. It's not going to be Mavis teaches typing. I don't know.
Carmen Sandiego. Come on, man.
That was educational? I thought that was just badass. Okay.
I forced my kids to play it this past weekend. Anyway.
Nice. Okay, so we're going to talk about it a little bit. I'm not going to get too crazy into it because it can get to be a very deep, very debatable topic. Basically, if you had to say in one word, what's the first thing that comes to mind when you hear the word localization in regards to a video game? Let's start with you, Werewolf.
Translation and cultural...
That's one word. Or one
okay,
term.
Translation.
Translation, okay.
You're doing it wrong.
You're doing it wrong, okay. Jake,
I'm sorry.
Jake, just use half the word to make up for the time we lost here. What do you think of when you hear translation? When you hear localization? Or do you think translation too?
Pan.
Pan? Okay, let's get the rest of the words.
Panties.
Panties? Okay. Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to go with censorship. That's probably what we're going to talk
Pretty
about.
much, yeah.
And how about you, GP?
Spoony.
Spoony. Bard?
Spoony Bard.
Okay, excellent. I see. We are one. Okay, so basically all those things kind of add up to localization. It's not one thing. A lot of people just think either censorship or translation. And those are two very common things that comes to localization in video games, but it's not everything. But it takes up a good chunk. The biggest thing is localization is kind of making it more appropriate for the intended audience. So if I went in and started playing a game in Japanese, it's one thing to learn how to read Japanese. I don't think that it's kind of reasonable to expect your audience to learn a new language to play a game. So they kind of have to do more than just translate it. If you punch everything into Google Translate, it might be very literal. It might make sense in the same way that you kind of remember doing Shakespeare in high school or junior high. And, you know, it's English. You understand the words, but you kind of have to break it down and say, what are they actually talking about? You know, so if I started using idioms and different sayings and stuff like that, there's going to be some confusion if we are talking from North American to, you know, Swedish to Russian to Filipino. You know, we don't all have the same kind of ways of talking or communicating. So translation is just one of many things that come into it. Let's go spread it out a little bit though, just because we're talking about it. We can have a little bit more than just translation, like censorship. I know that's something that you were going to talk about, Jake, because we were doing some research because we're professionals,
right?
So. What did you want to bring up about the censorship side of localization?
Well, I mean, two small ones I think probably worth bringing up that are NES-minded, because a lot of this happened for the NES. One was Ice Climbers, which is a bad game, but it's one that most people have played. You're
careful, you're treading on thin ice right now because I love that game.
Dad joke. So you're two guys. You're one guy, and you're climbing a mountain, smashing bricks with your mallet. You know, collecting vegetables as you do on a mountaintop. But as you're climbing up, the enemies are Yetis. So what I was reading is, I watched a video of, apparently in the Japanese version, though, it's not Yetis where you smash with the mallet, it's seals. So
nice.
clubbing seals might be a I don't know, a somewhat touchy subject in North America. So that's something that, not necessarily censorship, but they take it out of the North American release because of the controversy around, clubbing baby seals in the Arctic. So that's like one example I have. Another one would be the original Contra, which in Europe is actually called Pro Protector. And not just the name changed, but all the human sprites are changed to robots and cyborgs. Like, it's a sci-fi setting. They changed the storyline, the whole 9 yards.
Way better name, to be honest. I think the Pro Protector sounds way more badass.
Well, it's got a history in EU of censorship. I want to say the sequel, Super Contra, they changed it to Super C over there because they didn't want to associate with the Iran Game Genie, the Iran-Contra war. So like, there's a whole history of censoring Contra in the EU is kind of interesting.
I think that's a really strong one. But the NES generation in general, there was a lot of people considered it censorship, which some of it is. Some of them are like flagrant censorship, and other things are just a cultural thing, so they change it. Like the clubbing seals might be insensitive. I don't know if they did it back then or because of that, or maybe it was just because they said, hey, it would be cool if we could, like club Yetis, because that would be awesome. I'd be down for that. I'm just saying. Like
Yetis aren't manatees is what we're trying to say.
Yeah, exactly. save the manatees, the final manatees.
Final manatee.
Wait, it's save the manatees? I've been shaving all these manatees for no reason.
I told you about that. Come on.
They look so pissed.
So that's why they're scarred up.
They do have. That's the epic mustache. I'd be pissed too if someone shaved mine and it was that epic. But anyways. How about you, GP? What do you like? I know you're familiar with Contra / Pro Protector. So do you have any other games that stick out for something that changed? Not necessarily censorship, maybe more culturally appropriate, I guess.
Oh, well, here I was with my censorship example. Weren't there some fighting games where the ladies had some incredibly skimpy costumes, and so they changed the sprite work just slightly so that certain things were not revealed?
Yeah, I think that's pretty common. I mean, I remember seeing comparisons in video game magazines actually between Japan and North America, and it was always like either chest size was reduced or they added like a undershirt, like an underlayer to show less skin.
Well, and then there's, of course, the I think everybody knows about this game that was sold in VHS boxes. It was called Bubble Bath Babes. Yeah, it's a porn video game, essentially, but they wanted to release it to everybody, so they changed it to like a mermaid theme, slapped seashells on everybody, and changed the name to, I forget what it is called.
Oh, Disney's The Little Mermaid. Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, so, and they had to be seashells because B shells and D shells didn't fit.
I'm glad we're sticking with the dad jokes. See, that might not fly in another country. They might not get the dad jokes. So they kind of switch it up. So that's another thing, like physically changing sprites and stuff is one thing they'll do. Werewolf, maybe you can tell us something that'll be more outside the realm of the art. What could you tell us about localization?
Well, sometimes it's literally a matter of, references that people just wouldn't get. A lot of the Japanese writing would be, when they'd go for something, a joke, a lot of times it's puns. And then you can't really translate those puns into English very well. As an example, Lunar 2 on the making of disc, there's one of the guys talking about they're translating the game, and he's like, had I translated it directly, it would have been like there would have been a joke like, pickles, I thought you said baseball card. That doesn't make any sense.
Sounds pretty good to me.
I wish that stayed in there now, though.
Joke still lands.
So it's a matter of changing pop culture references and jokes and things like that so that the people for the new audience will still get it and it'll make sense. So it's keeping the tone while changing the dialogue to fit for the audience.
Now, would you call that a completely subjective or objective kind of thing? Because that sounds a little bit subjective to me. There's going to be wiggle room, right?
What do you mean?
I mean, one person could actually translate it differently, or one person can put a different reference in there, because there's obviously one thing in Japanese is not going to translate to another in English.
Well, yeah, and so that's why they'd put it entirely different sort of joke there if that were the case,
Yeah.
and something that, an English-speaking audience would get in this case.
So if we tried to use memes maybe that may not have extended past most English-speaking countries, then when you put that in there and try to translate it, it's probably going to be like the pickle thing, the pickle and baseball cards.
Exactly. So the idea, like, with a good localization, you won't realize that it happened.
Right.
It's only the bad ones that we catch, like, that sucked.
Yeah. What would you guys say are some of the worst localizations you can think of for any era? It doesn't matter if it's retro or newer. Is there anything that stands out in your memory?
Oh yeah, I've got several. But again, most of mine are just poorly translated items like the Spoony Bard thing we had talked about. So if you're okay with those examples, I'd be happy to talk about that.
Oh yeah, let's go for it. For anybody who's not aware, Spoony Bard is a reference from Final Fantasy 4. Yeah, exactly. Anyways, GP, take it away.
But no, okay, so when we started off the show and I was like, I am GP, welcome to die. The 4-person arcade cabinet of X-Men, whenever you got to Magneto, that's what he said. I am Magneto, welcome to die.
So, yeah, I thought he was German.
Right. And then there's my favorite, of course, everybody knows all your base are belong to us. And basically the entire script from, was it Zero Wing, I think it is? But no, my favorite one, and this happens from time to time just because of the way the alphabets translate, with there not being an L, I think it is. There's no L in Japanese. Samurai Showdown, or Shodan, because they were missing the second W. Samurai Shodan. Instead of victory, whenever you win a fight, it's victory.
Nice.
Yeah, and those, Ghostbusters, the congratulation instead of congratulation. That's a classic. So yeah,
Which Ghostbusters,
there's
though? The one I had the most experience with was Sega Master System because I actually owned it.
There's Metal Gear. I feel asleep.
I feel asleep.
I mean, the classic for this has got to be, what happened? Somebody set up the bomb.
Yeah, set us up.
How are you, gentlemen?
Yes.
All your base belong to us, right? Zero Wing has got to be the classic for localization or translation issues.
Make your time.
Make your time. Yeah.
I'm surprised none of you actually mentioned this guy are sick.
Oh, yeah.
What's that from?
Final Fantasy VII.
Is it really?
Yeah.
It is. It's Aerith showing Cloud around, I believe.
This guy are
Yeah.
sick. Wow.
He walks into I think they later explain that he has Mako poisoning or something. So, but yeah, this guy are sick.
Look, in the slums, there's just not a lot of educational
Exactly.
potential. There's not a lot of access.
There's a predisposition to becoming Mako poisoned in Sector 7, is what you're trying to say.
A lot of bad stuff goes down in Sector 7, yeah.
Final Fantasy IV, though, is also a really good reference for localization. Honestly, for poor localization, sadly.
Yeah, and not just for translation.
They made the game easier for Western audiences. They made the game easier for Western audiences, thinking that Western audiences wouldn't want such a difficult JRPG. They didn't think people would have the patience or what have you for such a game, so they toned it down.
Yeah, and you remember which ways they did tone it down?
I don't remember specifically. It's been a long time since I looked into that.
How about Jake? Do you know any of the ways they might have toned it down for the easy type, as they call it?
Yeah, let me just think about it for 1 sec here.
All of the various items were dumbed down to just being like heal.
Yeah.
A heal, purchase item. You can cure anything with that.
I just remembered. So the biggest change to make it easier is by calling it Final Fantasy 2.
Yeah, that's also another localization. They skipped 2 and 3 and just called 4 2 because they didn't think people could handle that. They're like, what happened to the other ones?
All jokes aside, I mean, that happened. I mean, there was games like, what was it, Ys 3, YS3, I was used to call it. Where were the other two? And then there was Super Valis 4 on Super Nintendo. I want to play the other 3 games. So they kind of dodged a bullet in that regard.
You know what? Ys 1 and 2 actually came to the West, but they were on TurboGrafx.
Oh, okay. Well, that's another reason why I didn't. Yeah, the only game I had on TurboGrafx was Keith Courage and Alpha Zones because it came with the console.
That was a weirdly good and bad game.
Yeah,
But back
it
to the
was.
topic.
Yeah, but so I mean that's how things can get really sticky sometimes. And looking back, a lot of things haven't aged well. So a lot of people call that censorship, but localization is basically trying to make it the best for the target audience. There's a lot of things that can go in a game, and they've changed. We go back to Final Fantasy IV briefly. It was the artwork was the same, but translation was different. The battle mechanics were different, so they had to basically change the entire game to suit it and keep the same graphics. That's how it worked out.
Well, they also removed spells, lowered the cost of certain items. Just overall made things more accessible, I think, and a little bit more difficult. I think they also took out attack items from the game as well.
Are these memories coming back to you now,
No,
Jake?
they're just flooding to me, just coming.
Okay. Nice. Okay.
Can you scroll down on your memories for a minute and read some more, please?
Well, to be fair, too, it's not just the whole idea. We're talking a lot about Japan and United States, right? But it's not just that. There's a lot of localization done in other countries, right? But I was going through stuff before the podcast. Germany, for example, Half-Life, when that came out there, Germany's kind of up there in terms of video game violence and not allowing it. So when you kill enemies in the original release of Half-Life, they don't die. They just sit down and take a nap. Can you imagine playing the entire game like that?
Really? Do they literally sit down and take a nap, or do they fall over?
No, it looks like they just sit down in place. So instead of like sprawling out backwards, they just sit down.
Impressive.
Do you guys remember the bad guy in Bionic Commando, Master D?
No.
I never got that far. I was terrible at that game.
Thank you for watching the Retro Therapy. We play that game all the time. No, if you haven't had the chance, or if you can Google it real quick, clearly Master D is Hitler.
Oh, right.
Unabashedly, like that's, and I understand why they don't want to put Hitler in a video game.
That's a no-no.
But but I would imagine that, I don't know, maybe in Japan or, when it was originally released, that's understood as to who that was. And they localized it, for other things. But yeah, no, I don't know who Master D was supposed to be, but.
I think that was mainly because they didn't want to be identified as Wolfenstein 2D is the main reason they wouldn't put Hitler. No.
Either way, you get to see his head explode at the end, so that's kind of cool.
That's pretty cool. I like that, especially in the Nintendo era.
Right.
So how about for something like Werewolf said, it's seamless if it's done right. Something that, looking back, you might not have thought about it, but was something that probably was localized to the point that, hey, this is actually really good. This is really relevant. This applies to us. It's more relatable. Is there anything that would stand out for you guys? How about Jake? Is there anything, doesn't matter, old or new again, is there anything that will stand out and make you think, hey, they did a good job with this?
I mean, for me, the standout localization is always going to be Final Fantasy VI. Enough that I know the guy who did the translation, like Ted Woolsey, right? His name is always famous for me as a teenager, as somebody who took a Japanese game that's incredibly text heavy and just made it awesome in the English translation. I don't think there's anything about Final Fantasy VI dialogue or just general the chatting in the game that I don't like, or at least it seems odd or whatnot. Like I don't remember any grammar errors that stick out. Like there's definitely localization efforts in there in terms of like taking out references to beer and alcohol and changing it to coffee for cafes and stuff. But overall, it's pretty decent.
Yeah, and I remember seeing a few blips here and there, but there's nothing that would be like ruin your experience. It was just kind of like, oh, okay, like more grammatical or a word didn't fit in, something like that. And in a game that big to have those few errors in it, I think that's crazy impressive, especially back then.
Now, is the guy who did the translations and such for Final Fantasy VI also the guy they hired for 4 and Mystic Quest? Am I remembering my history there?
Let me look this up and remember deep in the recesses of my mind.
Yeah.
Look this up and remember once I see the names.
Yeah, I think there's a guy they hired specifically for Mystic Quest.
Yeah, you're right.
Because that was their first effort to try to bring it over to, America.
Yeah.
And then either they kept him on for 4 and then took him to 6. I don't remember.
Ted Woolsey did Final Fantasy Mystic Quest 9-2. He did Secret of Mana, Breath of Fire, Chrono Trigger, Super Mario RPG. But he didn't do Final Fantasy IV, which probably fits because we were picking fun at it.
Right. He was going through some shit during 4, okay? Everybody was spoony. He was very upset.
So I'm thinking that I'm pretty sure Mystic Quest came to North America first.
Mm-hmm.
So that also might have been a little bit easier. And that might have been, if you play the Japanese version, maybe they have the same kind of spoony bard problems that Final Fantasy II has for us, /4. It just shows that these things are, it's two-sided. There's more than one way to look at it. So what about you, GP? Is there anything that stands out for you like that? Now that we're kind of more aware of what we're talking about here, is there anything that's sticking out?
Well, I want to say yes, but I'm afraid it's going to be off topic now. The reason I say that is I don't know if it was translated.
Stephen King's The Stand.
But I don't feel like it was translated, localized to Americas for, that purpose, but I think it was just made for the Americans, and that is Star Tropics. All the baseball references, Americola, all that kind of stuff.
Is that true, or is that because baseball's huge in Japan, right?
Yeah, it is.
No, it absolutely is, but I feel like I had heard that Star Tropics was released only in America, and they did a lot of things in there to try to appeal to the American sensibilities.
Mm-hmm. It looks like it was a North American and European release.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
And for Europe, it was like 2 years later.
There you go. So, they probably took those 2 years to say, hey, this is actually selling. We should localize
Well,
it.
they had to censor all those Hitlers,
Yeah. And the death ostrich, that's the one that scares the crap out of me in that game. It looks like an ostrich with a skull that's just bare, no flesh or anything, no beak,
It's
nothing.
horrifying.
It's just it's like a human skull on an ostrich, and
And they're fast.
Yeah, and you are not.
No, very much.
How they come up with that kind of enemy idea in the room. It's like, look, guys, we need new enemy. Well, how about an emu, but with a skull?
Right? Has anybody seen my LSD? No, nobody's seen it, but listen to this idea for a bad guy.
All right. Did I ask everybody for about that now?
No, but I was really thinking Chrono Trigger, and that kind of falls back to kind of similar to Final Fantasy VI. It was all very well done. Dialects were fitting for the characters and all that.
Yeah, they put a lot of work into how each character speaks quite uniquely, but all very coherently. It's definitely a well done translation.
Yeah.
Even Ayla, who barely speaks a cohesive sentence, it's still consistently.
The North American caveman.
Yeah. I mean, clearly, if you look at it, she's from South America. When you look where her, no, she's more Central America, I guess, if we were going to try to put it on the map and pretend that was actually the Earth.
I have no idea.
I don't know either. I'm just pulling out of my ass. But anyways, there goes my attempt at being witty. So this will be it for the day. For me, I got to say, there's been some amazing ones, and the worst one is probably Breath of Fire 2 for me, translation-wise. But localization-wise, I thought it was really good for an English audience, despite the bad translation, because they touched on a lot of stuff in that game, and stuff that was normally censored out, and especially in the NES era. So this is Super NES, and it got really heavy into like religion and life and just those topics that were much more deep than the Super Nintendo era was really common to see. Yeah, that's a bad example, but at the same time, I thought they touched on so much in the the translation was terrible to the point where yes and no were often mixed up, and I don't know if that was a translation or a programming error. I can kind of see both, just considering how poorly it was done. But the actual content of the game, the storyline, and how it worked, it was really impressive to see, because they touched on you basically have to go fight a god, or fight what everybody thinks is God. And I'm like, wow, cool. That's pretty badass, and that's something that you wouldn't expect out of the Super Nintendo. You'd think somebody would try to become a god like Kefka and then fight them after the fact. But no, this turns out to be, spoiler, you'd have to take out who you were saving to, essentially. You spoke to statues and went to churches to save your progress. And then you end up fighting the deity that you were saving your progress to. So it's pretty cool to see that. I'd like to see how that translated from Japanese, because it was very, I guess, Christian overall. And I don't know. I think it was really cool how they left that in.
Well, I don't know if you guys are familiar with the Xenosaga and Xenogears games.
Heard of them, and that's it. But I've heard great things about them.
The Xenosaga trilogy focuses very heavily on religion, intertwined with its main plot. And Xenogears did the same thing, and they're essentially the same overall existence. Just Xenogears takes place well after Xenosaga. And in Xenogears, since it was PlayStation era, Square was not comfortable releasing the game to Western audiences with all the religious references that were in it. So they had to change a bunch of stuff to where it wasn't Christian references, it wasn't Jewish references, it wasn't Muslim references, all these things. They made them to where they were sort of made up terms. And if you really look at these things, you can tell which one is supposed to be what. But they sort of scrubbed it clean to where the average person wouldn't realize that it was these things.
Gotcha. That's a perfect example of localization right there. And for better or for worse.
That wasn't localization for the audience's benefit so much as the company was kind of watching out its ass on that one, you know?
You know what? Actually, yeah. Okay. I totally take that back. But yeah, no, but it is a change for, regardless of reasoning, they did change it for their intended audiences, maybe for their own benefit, obviously, but it still is localization. So I am sticking with it. I don't know. I'm backpedaling now. Now you can see that it can get really tangly, right? Especially when you're dealing with topics like that. There's a lot of people that'll get offended by it. There's a lot of people that won't care, and it'll be over the heads of other people. So you're trying to break this middle ground so it can appeal to everyone. It's kind of like making a Marvel movie, you know. Compared to the comics, it's not going to hit the spot, but they're good action movies. They're a laugh. They have some comedy. They have some good scenes, special effects. So it appeals to the masses, and so I think that is the kind of video game equivalent for me. They're trying to bring that same kind of ground for everybody. Appeals to them asses. So is there anything you guys were thinking about that we haven't discussed at this point?
Yeah, I could talk.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of. I'm sorry, I don't have any examples. Go
ahead. You first.
Well, no, I'm trying to think of any video game that's ever tried to incorporate regional dialect, such as like a southern draw or southern mannerisms to characters that maybe, you know, in Japan, let's say, weren't from Georgia. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, I can totally see that.
Yakuza is kind of notoriously bad at this.
Yeah.
In playing through Yakuza Kiwami 2 recently, I noticed a lot of people who were supposed to be from outside of the Tokyo area were sort of given that. You know, instead of you, they say ya. A lot of ending, instead of ing, it would be in apostrophe.
Right.
And it was just a ton of that. And I couldn't keep reading it the way they were saying it because it didn't fit.
Yeah, when you're reading it,
they went overboard on it.
Yeah.
And it's such a fun game, but
I know they're trying to make it sound more natural too, but when you cut out every G at the end of ing, and when you say yeah instead of you, it really comes off like you're trying to force this certain dialect, like it becomes a trope almost.
Yeah.
And so if you're trying to read it normally and you spell everything out normally, you're going to read it and you're probably going to cut out the G's when you're saying something with ing.
It's like when they took a character script, instead of actually reading through and rewriting it to feel more comfortable, they just did the lazy copy paste, you know, replace all YOU with YA, you know?
Sure. Search document, yeah. Also, how have we not mentioned Soda Popinski yet?
Oh, I was waiting for someone else to do it.
What was he in Japan?
What about him?
Vodka drunkinsky.
Oh, was he really?
Yeah. Yeah, so they switched all the alcohol references to Soda Pop. Because we had not yet discovered vodka at that point.
Like in Chrono Trigger, there's the guy you meet, the adventurer, Toma. and he asks you if this is a tough adventure, might not make it. Can you, if I die, can you pour one out for me in my grave? And then later on, you acquire the Toma's Pop item or something like that. It's like basically the implication is that's a word. You're pouring a bottle of pop on his grave, but really it's like sake or something from the Japanese version.
Oh, sake? I would have just thought beer.
Yeah.
Nice.
Well, that sort of thing even stuck around into Dreamcast era because Skies of Arcadia, instead of liquor, it was liqueur.
So they're stepping it up slowly.
It's all fancy French.
Not getting into the hard stuff right away. I say liqueur, by the way.
Game Genie.
Game Genie. It's going to be a thing. Jake always sounds drunk, always says something wrong, and I just always say, but anyways. Now people are going to be listening to that from now on, so I'm going to have to make sure to edit the but anyways out.
Don't you localize me.
Don't you Okay. Now, look at what I've done. All right. GP, did you think of your example? Will Werewolf was talking there, or
What about the southern characters, the southern accents and stuff?
Oh, I was helping his case there, I thought.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I thought Werewolf kind of made my point for me.
Oh, fine. Okay, Jake, how about you, man?
I got one. Can I talk now? Is that okay, Mommy?
I don't know, GP. Are you done, or do you actually?
It's gonna sound really weird as drunk
Oh,
Jake.
fuck.
I told you to call me Daddy, but please go ahead.
So the example I dug up was
But I mean, there's some fighting games where they got like, okay, go ahead.
But anyways, so man,
Hey, don't steal my line.
it's branded now. It's gonna be on a T-shirt coming soon. There's a game that came out for the Wii U, which may not be retro, but hey, it's sure as hell a dead console, right? It was called Tokyo Mirage Sessions. I can't talk either. It basically is a Shin Megami Tensei cross Fire Emblem game. Normally not my wheelhouse, but I started playing Final Fantasy Fire Emblem Three Houses recently, and it kind of got me looking at past Fire Emblem games to see which ones I might want to pick up. And I was reading about this one, and this one's interesting. It's obviously the fantasy genres mixed together, but it takes place in modern Tokyo, like present day Tokyo. And it's heavily involves the Japanese idol industry, right? The ultra cute, maid culture, singers, younger models and girls and whatnot. In North America, kind of creepy, especially when the age of one of these models is like 16 to 18. So it's a bit weird, but they brought this game over to North America anyway, which was kind of interesting, but they made a ton of changes. They said during pre-release that they're keeping the original Japanese voiceovers to maintain that, Japanese style to the game when it came over here. But they went and re-recorded 300 lines with the original Japanese voice actors because of some of the content changes they made. And like, we're talking things like bumping the ages up of some of the characters from 16 to 17, 17 to 18. A lot of it takes place around the idea of gravure idols, which is more of the risque, sexy modeling type. Again, these are teenage girls or older teenage girls, and something like that doesn't fly over North America. So they took a lot of that stuff out, and instead of skimpy bikinis and low-cut tops showing cleavage, it's all like full-body costumes and outfits. It's quite radically different.
So skin tight cat suits, which is a whole different niche for
that's the thing.
Somebody who's
that's the thing too. One of the characters in the Japanese version wears this very deep cut dress, and in the American release, it's her body's been covered white or painted white, so to make it less obvious that it's TNA. But one of the best things for me though is I mentioned at the top of the episode, the the panties. So
pan, short for panties.
Yeah, panties. I mean, there's tons of fan service in this game, right? And a lot of panty shots in the Japanese game. In North American game, though, so apparently what they did is they put they're not the only ones to do this. They put a black void under the skirt, so whenever the camera pans in that direction, you just see a void into darkness, which sounds like my ex-girlfriend if you ask me, but hey, okay. But anyway, it's a lot of censorship for the North American audience, but a lot of these changes, this game is so Japanese culture oriented. I almost question why they even bothered releasing North America, right? When you have games like Star Tropics, which didn't even come out there, and it's based around American culture and stuff, it makes sense. But why did they even bring this game across? Like, it's interesting. I'm glad to see all kinds of stuff come over, even if I'm not really interested in the type of game. But it just seems like such a wild amount of changes to make it palatable for the North American audience.
And then they just re-released it again on Switch.
But the one they re-released in Japan on the Switch is the North American censored version.
Oh, really?
Yeah, which is very strange.
Well, I think it's also in the West now.
Yeah, I think it came out on Switch. Recently, if it's not coming out already, very soon.
And so these are good points too when it comes to localization, is that every game does not come across from one place to the other. So there are choices being made saying, do we have an audience for this somewhere? And they obviously made the choice now of saying, okay, yeah, we do over here. We still got to change it, but we got
I just remembered something. So it's coming out on the Switch. Actually, I think it might have come out today or this week. The Kunio-ko collection on the Switch, which is the...
He's thinking of something.
No, I'm not thinking. I'm not typing away on the keyboard. I don't repeat my jokes. What's wrong with you?
I think that one came out yesterday.
Right. So that's the...
We're dating the recording, but...
The secret's out. What's the River City Rampage? That's Kunio-ko series is basically River City
Ransom.
Rampage in the U.S.
Ransom.
You think I would know this? But so a bunch of them are unreleased Japanese games in the series are coming over to in this part of this package in North America. And there's actually a hockey one. Like I know there's a volleyball one and a basketball one, but I didn't realize there's a hockey Kunio-ko game. I didn't even know hockey existed in Japan compared to North America.
Isn't there a Super Dodgeball one?
Yeah, there totally is.
Yeah, it looks like the original version of what Super Dodgeball was in Japan before being made what it was released in the West as was also translated. So you get the high school dodgeball game instead of the World Tour dodgeball game.
Which is honestly way more epic.
I think the same thing goes for the original River City Ransom. I think they retranslated that one as what it was instead of giving us, they also give you River City Ransom in this collection, but they also give you the Kunio-kun Trouble in High School or whatever it's called. I don't know. It's pretty interesting that they went back and relocalized these games, but leaving them in their original setting.
Yeah, and that's kind of cool because they're giving you a specific experience too. So again, there's choices that can be made. So things aren't black and white when it comes to localization.
Wait, Contra used to be called Probotector?
To that note, I actually have another good example of a localized game. Blaster Master.
Oh, yeah.
Blaster Master was localized like crazy. So originally in Japan, it was a game called Metafight. And it took place on the planet Sophia 3rd. You were driving around a tank called the Nora something. I don't remember exactly. But they brought it to the West and did a number of things. So the story got completely rewritten to be substantially less sci-fi, to where they put it on Earth. The tank was called Sophia. I don't know why they made that change. Instead of it being, instead of it starting off like, oh, the planet, like there's only a few of us left and we're still trying to save our planet, it's some kid chases his frog out of his house down a hole and finds a tank. And then he's off to the races trying to kill all these monsters to save his frog. And in the process, saves the world.
Like you do.
That's such a radical change.
It really is.
I don't know. I think really the whole idea behind that is teaching kids that you can accomplish big things, but you need to put it in a small, manageable type of setting. Like, that's what got me through 6th grade.
Oh, I thought it was the tank that you were driving around.
It wasn't just the name and the story. It was also, they had a few spots that they changed. The one that really sticks out for me is on level 4. Toward the end of the stage, you have to make in Metafight, you have to make a blind jump off of a high ledge. And, as the boy, not the tank. So if he falls, 2 squares, he's dead. So he can't really make a big jump. You have to grab a ladder after you make this blind jump. You can't see the ladder before you jump, and then go down. If you miss the ladder, it's dead. The Western version, you go up the ladder, and you've got a whole platforming section instead as you work your way down to that ladder. So much simpler, but also no blind jump.
I don't know. NES games and fall damage are two things that just don't sit well with me.
Is Dr. Cossack still Dr. Cossack in the Russian Mega Man 4?
No, he's Dr. Smith.
And it's a baseball cap, right? On Kalinka?
Tell you that fuzzy hat doesn't fit.
Susan, not Kalinka.
We already made fun of this, GP. Come on.
The Siberian Citadel is now San Francisco, townhouse.
And the
Look
parking
forward
is
to our
horrible.
Tep B debate with GP and Sick Jake.
But anyways,
Can we self-promote in our own promotions?
right?
But anyways. Yeah, so, I mean, this just goes to show that localization is not translation and it's not censorship, although those things are involved. So you can see there's a lot to get into. Is there any final points you guys would like to bring up before we close it up? Speak now or forever hold your chicken nuggets.
Oh, damn it.
Well, now I got to go to the freezer.
Oh, I am error. That's all I got.
See, I just thought his name was Aurora. That's what I thought it was. As a kid.
That wasn't even a mistranslation because there was his friend Bagu was the mistranslation. He was supposed to be Bug. They were a joke. He was saying like his name was supposed to be Error and the other guy's name was supposed to be Bug, and it was supposed to be a programming joke. Ah ha ha.
Oh, Japanese dad joke. I see.
Yep.
That's a complete fail on me because I thought his name was Aurora and the other guy, because I was 7 years old when I played the game, said his name was Bagu and I thought it was supposed to be Ragu and then I wanted spaghetti. So I got to revisit all this stuff now. Thanks, guys. Yeah, so I think we kind of beat the horse a little dead today, so that's always good.
That's what we're here for.
Exactly.
Dead horse beaten.
Yeah, we got to take those jokes and just burn them to the ground. So, guys, it's been fun. I like talking about this because you guys brought up some stuff that even I never thought about, and I thought I was the one most prepared for this because I chose to do this episode and I did the research to make it sound like I know what I'm talking about. So thank you for making me feel like a putz. Werewolf, where can we find more of you, by the way?
Twitch and Twitter, WAREWULFF.
And that's his Twitch and Twitter name by the folks. That's not his call sign. He's not a radio, but he does have the voice of an awesome TJ. Speaking of awesome voices, GP, how's it going?
Yes.
Where can we find more of you?
I'm on Twitch as The Retro Therapy, and you can find me on Instagram and Twitter as The Retro Therapy as well.
But he's not on Tinder. I've tried. So, Jake, how about you, man? Where can we find you?
And yeah, my name is Sick Jake, and you can find me. Hold on, let me look it up.
He's got to remember.
I can be found on Twitch and Twitter, and for one day only, Facebook Gaming at SICJAKE.
All right,
Yeah, I
guys,
feel like
thanks.
there's a funny joke there with Sick Jake's searching his memory and then typing the keys. How people are like, hey, if I die, delete my browser history. Like, if I'm dead, somebody erase my memory, okay?
Yeah, Jake is the one who started that meme, apparently. All right, everybody. Thanks again for listening. And if you guys, also anybody who's listening, you'd like to join our Discord, send us an email or just talk with us. We have Discord, we have email. Like I just said, I can't think of anything else off the top of my head. Join us in our...
Beating that joke like it's dead.
Exactly. Beat us like we're dead. If you want to talk and voice some concerns that we didn't cover today, let us know. We love hearing from you guys.
Please.
And so, yeah, this is Press B to Cancel. And thanks again. And until next episode, stay frosty.
Juice pasta.
Juice pasta?
Choose pasta.
I heard juice
Oh, I thought you
pasta.
said juice.
Put that on a t-shirt.
Pasta.
Juice pasta. This turkey sandwich is horrible.
Special thanks for music go to Arthur the Ancient, found on SoundCloud, or The Last Ancient on YouTube. For more episodes, please visit our website, pressbtocancel.com. As well, feel free to like or subscribe at Apple iTunes, Google Podcasts, or anywhere else you like to listen to your favorite shows. As always, thank you. This has been
Press B to cancel.
Press B to cancel.